oh, there you go. The machine's told me it's recording now. That way, if for some reason you can't make a session and you need to catch up, you can view the recording. If you want to look back on some content that was discussed, you can, go back. And so these get uploaded usually about within 24 hours of the session. It'll get uploaded to our learning management system, which we'll take you through shortly. We do look at some road crashes as a way to try to learn from those and prevent them in the future. There's nothing hugely graphic in that, but I just do sort of flag that there are some road crash scenes which we will look at. And if that is something that may disturb you, just please take note and do what you need to. Right, during the session, how do you communicate? Well, our preferred method is for you to use the chat function, which a lot of you already have jumped in there and are saying hi. You are on mute at the moment and you don't have the ability to unmute yourself. We can do that if there's something you'd particularly like to talk about, discuss, or at some points throughout the sessions, I will be asking for volunteers to talk us through an assessment that they've done or the like. Before I jump to that though, if you have any challenges with the chat, as in there's not a chat function there for you, or it's not working for some reason, you can use the Q&A. So occasionally a firewall or something blocks the chat function, but the Q&A is usually there. So we will be monitoring both, but the chat is our preferred method. If you did want to talk and want to get the ability to unmute yourself, put up your hand and we will we can find you and then give you access to unmute yourself. There is no ability in this for you to have your camera on. So you can happily do this session in your pajamas and nobody will ever know because there is no camera for your end. Now, if your tech fails, which is always a possibility, you've got a few options. So Neil's just said the chat's not working for, oh no, it is now maybe. Okay, but anyway, you've got the Q&A as your backup. If your tech fails, which can happen, if the way that seems to fix it most of the times is to just log out and log back in, the old shutdown restart style. So that's if your audio's not working or the like. We have provided you, and hopefully you've received a pack with a memory stick, which has all the PDFs of the slides that are going to be covered. You could dial in as well. So you could, in theory, use the PDFs and your phone and go through the session that way. But if you're in that dire a situation with your technology, it might be worth just watching the recording later on. And we'll take you through the learning management system shortly. Okay, on to the next slide. Right, this is Emma, and I'll briefly introduce Emma, and then I'll let Emma tell you about how she can help you through this session. So Emma's training coordinator at Safe System Solutions, and she has been helping out with road safety audit course and the safe system assessment course, and a little bit of the road design for heavy vehicle course as well. So I'll hand over to Emma to briefly tell you how she can help you and what you can do talking to Emma through the course.
Welcome, thanks Ken. Yeah, I can help you with any of the technical and logistic issues that you may be having. So to get started, some of you may not have received your education packs yet. We believe there's been a slight delay with deliveries around the country due to border closures and things like that. So it may be a little delayed, but don't panic. The USB content is also available through our learning management system, Moodle. So everything is there. So we've given you multiple options of how to access all the content.
Emma, I might just, sorry, your sound's not coming through very well. It's very crackly here, and I'm getting some comments in the chat. It's also.
Is that better, Ken? It's
a bit better. Yep.
Okay. I did drop my headphones in a cup tea the other day, so I might need to buy some new ones. Um, yes, so I was just saying, for those who missed it, there's been a little delay in some of the education packs getting out to people. Is that better, Ken?
Not really, no. I think we might have to, I'll take over.
No worries, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, so your education pack should have come through, but if it hasn't, there's a bit of delay in the post, and we can, there's nothing in there that's essential to the course in terms of everything is on Moodle, which I'm going to take you through shortly. There's just a few extra bits and pieces and a few little snacks and things to keep you excited and engaged. But Emma is your go-to person if you can't make one of the sessions. So just letting her know via email, or you've got phone numbers there if you need. If you having like ongoing technical issues or access to the learning management system issues, get in contact with Emma. Anything administrative or logistics about the course, just talk to Emma, and her contact details are there. She sent you an email, or a couple of emails now, I think. Anyway, so you can just reply to those, and we'll help you through that. So Emma just wanted to pop in and say hi, and make sure you put a face to the name, and so you can chat to her at any point. And yes, there's a comment in there about your background, Emma, and I will explain the background shortly. It's not just a lovely background. There's some reasoning behind it, and actually maybe we'll do that now.
Yeah, it's not my kid's bedroom, but
yes. So throughout this course, we like to give out prizes, and so Emma's in the prize pit there, and they're not quite the prizes that you may be earning, but and winning, but you will, if you participate in the course, have a chance to win a prize. And you win prizes by being the first to answer questions correctly in the chat, asking really great questions, volunteering to talk through different elements that we might ask for volunteers for, or if you log in a little bit early to a module, a session, you're a chance to win a prize, because we just do some general trivia to start, just an incentive to get people to log in a little bit early. So about 3 minutes before the session, a couple of trivia questions, give out a few prizes that way. And how do you get your prizes, you may ask? Well, at the end of the session, once you successfully complete the course, you will get an electronic copy of your certificate immediately through our system. But then a little bit later down the track, you will get a physical certificate posted to you, and in that pack will be any prizes that you've won along the way. So, exciting incentive to get involved, answer questions, ask questions, and it's a bit of fun. So that's why Emma is in the prize pit. Okay, let me keep ticking away here. This is me, and this is me before my COVID moustache, which is something to entertain me, looking at myself on a Zoom screen. I'm the principal engineer at Safe System Solutions. I worked in Vic Roads, the Victorian Road Authority, for quite a few years before that, 14 years or so. My contact details there. So anything in terms of technical content around safe system assessments, please get in contact with me. Now, I've popped my QR code there to my LinkedIn, and I've done that because I'd love to connect with you on that platform, because the road safety conversation just is an ongoing conversation. We need to continue to learn and innovate and come up with ideas, and we do share quite a bit of content from that perspective via our LinkedIn channels, as a way to keep industry updated on the latest things happening in road safety infrastructure especially. So feel free to connect there if you're on LinkedIn. Now, this is our learning management system. It is called Moodle, and you should have received an email from Safe System Solutions granting you access to Moodle. Now, if you haven't received that, it may be in your junk folder, so you'd have a look there. But if you can't find it there, you haven't got this email, you haven't got access to Moodle, you need to get in contact with Emma, because everything happens through here, in the sense of all your assignments need to be uploaded through there. There's the end of session quizzes. We call them little tests that you've grasped some of the content. It all happens through here. So if you haven't got access to this, you can't pass this course. So make sure you have access. And I know a few of you have already got in and been playing around and introduced yourself. So it's a nice little thing for these online courses to be able to introduce yourself to others and see who's on the course and who else is there. So you can write a nice little introduction, and that'll be good to see. So lots of features in there. I'm not going to go through them all. You can have a play around with it. That is where we'll put the recordings of past sessions, and there's ability for participants to upload resources if there's particularly interesting things you've got. So that is Moodle. One more little thing that we do to try and keep the sessions engaging is the use of Wally the Wombat. So Wally the Wombat warning sign there it appears a random number of times in each session. And what you have to do is count the number of times Wally appears in the session, and that will be one of the questions in the end of session quiz/test. And you just have a scrap of paper or something, and just each time you see this warning sign in the slides, just make a note of it, and then you'll get a total at the end. Now, we do give you a little bit of buffer either side of the Wally count, just in case you had to deal with a screaming child or dropped your coffee in your lap or something like that. So there's a little bit of tolerance, but you do have to keep an eye out. And so you probably won't be able to do too many emails or design that roundabout while you're going through this course. Now, this is not a Wally. Your Wally count is 0 at the moment. So don't count that one, but that's what they look like. Okay, how do you actually pass this course? We actually do have a benchmark for competency within this course. So just sitting through it is not going to get you there. You actually have to participate and to a competency level. So you are required to attend 4 out of the 5 live webinars. So you're at 1 at the moment, unless you're watching this as a recording. And you have to view any that you can't make. Now, if like life just has the better of you and you absolutely cannot make more than the one you're allowed, get in contact with Emma and have a chat about that. And, exemptions may be provided. Completion of all set tasks. So you need to do those quizzes and exercises and assignments, get the site visit done and the report. I'll talk you through all of that in lots of detail a bit later on. And our competency benchmark is 80%. And so you need to get 80% on all quizzes and assignments. That's quite a high mark, but don't worry too much, because everything that's in there is going to be covered in the sessions. And also you have access to one-on-one coaching if you need. So you get in contact with me and we can have a one-on-one Zoom call. You have 3 attempts at everything. So most people tend to have a first crack at it. And if they do really badly, then they organize that catch up. Or maybe if they completely don't understand what they've got to do or the content, they'll get in contact. And my aim is to ensure everybody gets up to this competency level. So I will be pushing hard to make sure that happens, and you have access to lots of one-on-one coaching and the like as you go. So I'm confident you will all get up to this, but it will take a little bit of work from yourselves. Okay. At that point, I'm going to pause and we'll see if anybody has any questions. So type any questions you've got about the running of the course, the admin, the logistics. No. Okay, looks like everybody might be happy there. Oh, that's good. All right. Well, thank you, Emma, for dropping in and saying hi.
Thanks, Ken.
Oh, your
yeah.
audio's good.
Oh,
now.
good.
Oh, no,
yeah.
no, it went bad after you zoomed.
Okay. Have a great program, everyone, and please get in contact if you need any assistance at all, and I'll be happy to help.
Thanks, Emma. It sounds like the kids are ready for you there. We'll catch you later. I'm going to run through some content now. But yeah, do contact Emma if you need. Okay, quick, put your questions into the chat as we go. Don't wait for me to pause for questions. Just as you think of things, write those questions in, and we'll get them there. I thought I'd start straight off the bat with sort of contextualizing safe system assessments within road transport projects. Because I'm sure a lot of you have heard of road safety audits, and I dare say some of you are quite experienced road safety auditors, or certainly have procured road safety audits, or at least heard the term. And road safety audits are an independent assessment of a road transport project with a safety focus. And they're very valuable and will continue to be valuable. There's also sort of that independent design review. So somebody's designing a new bit of road, that it will be reviewed by a second set of eyes to ensure that all correct standards have been met, that the calculations were done correctly, that it's, picked up different bits and pieces. And there's a bit of overlap between audits and design reviews. We know, or those of you who do audits, or anybody who's done the audit course with me, perhaps, will certainly know that audits are not checks against standards, right? There's a bit of that you might do, but there's a lot of other stuff out here that's not a check against standard. It's a common sense look at a design or a project in terms of what could possibly present death or serious injury in the future, regardless of whether it meets standards or not. But there is some standard checking and guidelines, and there's a bit of overlap there. And design reviews look at heaps of stuff that are not particularly road safety related in a very clear, direct line. I don't know, your drainage calculations, and you can make a link to road safety, but it's kind of down the track there, or maintenance or longevity of the asset and those sorts of things. A safe system assessment is kind of this interesting beast that covers some of all of that, but also has its own stuff outside here as well. You may pick up some standards things, you may pick up some audit things, and you may pick up some other things. So it's a different beast. It has some overlap, but certainly I think important to understand that. Also important to understand that safety and design is a different thing again. And safety and design is about, more about things like, can whatever is being proposed be constructed safely? Can they build it safely? Can they maintain it safely? Can they do all the maintenance safely? Can they decommission it down the track safely? And then there is can it operate safely perspective, which is probably a fair bit of that overlap. And then this last little one I pop in there is what we call a DDA compliance audit. So the DDA stands for Disability Discrimination Act. Now it's termed some things slightly different in different jurisdictions, but that is essentially legal obligations to ensure that any facility being built can be accessed by all the members of our community, regardless of their physical ability. So whether that's people in wheelchairs or vision impaired, so ensuring that. Now there is a little bit of overlap. Sometimes road safety audits pick up some DDA things. There's certainly a whole lot of stuff they sit out on their own, maybe a little bit of safe system assessment overlap there. Okay, an immediate question that's come in from Neil, and it's a good one, is can the same person do a road safety audit as a safe system assessment? And the answer is yes. Yes, so they are independent from the design. That's the critical thing. So you can't be the designer or the project manager or the like and do the road safety audit. you can sort of be involved in a safe system assessment if you have that involvement in the project. But most jurisdictions are mandating that safe system assessments need to be led by an independent, by somebody independent. So a bit like road safety audits there. But in terms of those two, yes, and there is some efficiencies to be gained in a project if you have the same road safety audit team that does the safe system assessment as well. So they might get some efficiencies in part of that overlap. We'll get into a bit more of that sort of policy, practical stuff a little bit later down the track. So keep your questions going into the chat. But that's just sort of scene setting, a bit of context there. I do want to now jump into a bit of the philosophy of the safe system and trying to make sure we're all on the same page there. And it's one of the interesting things is I've been in the road safety game for a long time, 20 years or so. And safe systems been a big part of that journey for quite a bit of that time. And I do find a lot of people, though, they say, "Oh yeah, I know. Yep, I know safe system." Yeah, okay, that's good. And then you sort of dig into that, and you discover what their vision of safe system is just really sort of good traditional road safety practice. And it's not quite true. So what I'm going to do is actually go and just talk about the principles and the elements of the safe system to ensure we're on the same page. And I will probably challenge some people's traditional way of, or the way they have thought of the safe system. Okay, so by the end of this module, you're going to understand the principles and elements of the safe system. You're going to get a feel for kinetic energy thresholds for different crash types. You'll be able to explain that difference between that traditional approach and the safe system approach to road safety, cite some best practice on behavioural change and vehicle safety interventions. Even though we're predominantly a course associated with infrastructure, we do cover off a bit of that because it's part of a safe system assessment. It's a holistic system, and give reasons why speed is so critical to the safe system approach. All right, I'm going to be nice to you here. Wally count is 1. You are on 1 Wally for this session. No more help from me. All right, I'm going to move a bit quicker now to try and cover off a good bit of content. But first thing I just want to say is your road safety strategy will commit you to the safe system approach to road safety. And it's every jurisdiction in Australia and New Zealand has basically committed in one way or another to the implementation of the safe system. And most jurisdictions have adopted safe system assessments as a tool to assess their infrastructure investments on alignment with safe system principles. And interestingly, the federal government's committed to the safe system and advocate safe system assessments. And interestingly, the UN actually has now adopted the safe system as an integrated part of the Sustainable Development Goals. So, it is absolutely entrenched. So there's no real argument, should we go down this approach or not? We're in, we are absolutely in. Now it's about how do we take this philosophy and actually apply it on the ground? And that's where safe system assessments play a wonderful, wonderful role. But let's go back in time, all right? Let's go back in time and look at an early version of the safe system sort of diagram. Somebody trying to create a diagram of the safe system. And I'm going to give a prize out here. I'm going to find a bit of paper so I can keep a note of who our prize winners are. But the person, and you just type it in the chat, that can tell me the year that Australia, the year Australia or New Zealand formally adopted the safe system approach at a national level, either in Australia or New Zealand. So just type your guesses into the chat in a year. Have a few guesses if you want. The safe system approach to road safety. And you can talk to just the panelists and the like, or you can talk to everybody using your little arrow drop-down menu there. So, okay, we're starting to get some ranges there. And I am going to give a prize to Kurt. Kurt, you are our first prize winner, and the excitement of not knowing what the prize is. Kurt guessed 2003, and it was 2003/4, depending on Australia or New Zealand, and which jurisdiction within Australia. But 2003, 2004 is basically when national governments committed to the safe system. This is how we are now going to approach road safety. Been doing lots of great road safety stuff for many, many decades before that, but now said, right, the safe system is the way we're going to do it. So Kurt, you've won something. I was looking at prizes in the prize pit the other day. I saw some pretty cool socks. So hopefully you get socks. Okay, so this was back in 2004, and I was in the road safety department in Vic Roads, and we were debating internally, but also at a national level, exactly what the diagram of the safe system should look like. We understood the philosophy, but well, to a degree, but we were debating this. Now, let me talk you through this early diagram, and then I'll explain something. So at the center of this, right in the middle here, we see human tolerance to physical force. How much force can humans take before they break, basically? Now, this is a biomechanics physics thing, right? This is, that's it. It's just a physics and human biology point. Then around that, we see safe speeds, safe vehicles, and roads and roadsides. And that was the system, right? That was it. Now, you probably noticed there that there is something that's missing, which is safe or safer people. Now, that was absolutely intentional. And it was intentional because we were essentially saying that we are going to try to create a system that does not require humans to act perfectly all the time. It's a system set up for human failure because humans fail all the time. Right? I've made many mistakes already today. They've all been fairly minor, and hopefully none are going to have larger ramifications. But we make mistakes all the time, right? And we're going to make mistakes on the road, whether we're in the vehicle, whether we're a pedestrian, whether we're a cyclist. Mistakes will be made. And what we're trying to do is create this impenetrable system that says, okay, it's very hard for us to eliminate mistakes. It's impossible for us to eliminate mistakes from humans. So how do you create a system around that that means it's not going to result in death or serious injury at any point? Now, in this debating and challenge, and people, everybody, right at the last minute before national adoption of it, they added this alert and compliant road users as this sort of overarching square around it. There was a lot of us who went, well, that is just a big fail. Like we've just failed here, because that's essentially giving everybody a get out of jail clause, just to say, well, nothing we can do about it because they weren't alert or they weren't compliant. They ran through that red light. They fell asleep, right? It's there. Like, you have a responsibility if you're driving to follow the rules. And look, the system says you've got to follow the rules. We can't do it. That thinking is counter to the safe system approach. Now, let me say here, though, that we are not encouraging people to be non-compliant or not alert, right? We're going to continue to do things to try to make people as compliant and as alert as possible, keep working on human factors and ideas like that. But we need to create a system that acknowledges humans make mistakes all the time. And how do you create a system where that does not result in death or serious injury? That is a safe system. I'm going to explore that in a bit more detail. But some people sort of go, ooh. And especially if you're like me and you've sort of done crash investigations for many hundreds of crashes, and you just shake your head at some of the behaviours and states people drive in, and the things that have happened out there, and you want to blame, you want to say, well, what were they thinking? But what we need to do is to actually get change, is to flip that on the head and not blame, but say, where has our system failed? Where has our system failed, right? Certainly the system has failed with the individual's choices or behaviours or whatever's happened there in some of those crashes. But our system has failed to not intervene, to let that happen. And then our system has failed to let that result in death or serious injury. So where we're moving in the safe system is we're still going to try to do everything we can to minimise people's mistake making or inappropriate behaviour, but we're going to look at the rest of the system and say, what can we do for the system to intervene? And that could be the vehicle just doesn't let them do whatever that was. It could be that the infrastructure makes it near impossible for them to get up to speeds, or takes the energy of the crash and redirects it like a barrier system, so runs along the barrier, right? Altering these different elements of the system to say that we're going to have humans do some pretty, or try to do some pretty bad stuff, or do some just human stuff like fall asleep or be distracted by things. And how do we create a system that caters for that? And so what it is really is like managing mistakes. So anyway, they've taken this diagram and over time it's evolved. And you'll see different diagrams like come up like this now. You might have seen this one, or you might have seen this one in the past, New South Wales one there. This one is a Victorian one that we've used a number of times. I'm going to use this one just as a base. I could have picked any of them. There's probably another 20 out there that we could use. We've got here, human bodies are vulnerable, so that's that physical force. We've got an acknowledgement that people make mistakes. We've got this shared responsibility, and that's really the one to talk about. People are going to make mistakes as individuals, and we're the system designers. We need to create a system that acknowledges humans stuffing up and caters for that, manages that. We want to really, I say we want to minimize mistakes and manage mistakes. There's been a big focus in the past of trying to eliminate mistakes on the road network. And that's just not going to happen until vehicles, are 100% completely taking over, basically. And even then, we've got a lot of challenges there. But anyway, we won't get into too much detail on that. And out the outside here, we've got the vehicles, the speeds, the road users, so they're still there, and the roads themselves and the road sides. Now, people often call those the pillars of the safe system: the vehicles, the speeds, the roads and the roadsides and the road users. I don't refer to them as pillars because I don't want anybody to visualize isolated things. These are so intertwined and interacting. It's like they're so connected that I call them elements. They're the elements of the safe system, but people do call them pillars. I did have somebody say, well, no, but they're pillars holding up a whole system. So you can't, one of them. They're like, okay, that's not too bad. There is a fifth pillar that's used more at a UN level, at an international level. Sorry, somebody says they lost me, but yeah, you can watch the recording to catch up. There is a fifth element or fifth pillar, which is often talked about more at an international level rather than in Australia and New Zealand too much. But I'll give a prize if somebody can just tell me what they think that fifth thing is. Have a guess if you want. you can put it to just panelists if you don't want everybody to see, or you can have a guess. Chance to win a prize. You don't lose any marks if you just have a guess. Okay, getting a few guesses. This is good. Nobody's quite there. So a couple of people are saying environment, which is actually covered in the roads and roadsides element. Okay, so people talking about legislation and government, governance and government and management and those sort of things. Not actually one, but very important. No, all right. Nobody's quite got there. Really good thoughts in there, and they are interlinked. It's actually post-crash care. Response. Glenda, as I was saying it, Glenda popped it in. Glenda gets a prize. Jotted that down. So yeah, it's response, post-crash care. So when a crash happens, how quickly we can get to injured parties, how effective our emergency response systems are, our medical facilities. And we know that we can have significant impact on the trauma to our society if we are better at all of that. And so it's acknowledged. The reason it's acknowledged a bit more in other countries around the world, especially developing nations, is that they're very far behind sometimes in that trauma emergency response. And Australia and New Zealand tend to be pretty good. I mean, we can always improve a lot in those areas. So the key principles I want you to take here from the SAFE system. These are the principles, all right? We talked about people making mistakes. We talked about people being vulnerable. That's like as in vulnerable to physical force. We've got this shared responsibility. So it's no more just blaming somebody and saying, well, they were on their phone, so it's their fault. Right? We say they were on their phone, that is something we don't want to happen. We've got to try and minimize that. But how do we alter the system so either crashes don't happen or those crashes happen at survivable energy levels, basically? And we do have an aspiration under the SAFE system for no deaths or serious injuries. And it is why the SAFE system is the underpinning of your Vision Zero or the like, or towards zero, Vision Zero. Sustainable safety is sometimes what it's called in some of the European nations. But the SAFE system, philosophy and fundamentals, principles are the foundation of that. Now, it's an interesting one when we talk about no death or serious injuries in road transport. We've done quite a bit of surveying on the community's attitude towards that, and a lot of people just see that as a ridiculous impossibility. But as we sort of narrow this down further, and we talk and segment up our road system, we can certainly achieve no death or serious injury in different road environments. It's been done around the world. There are cities around the world, I think it's Oslo, who achieved no death or serious injury in their city last year. And then you've got some pretty good examples of things like that, but it is a complex system that we're up and running, and altering it to that is sometimes beyond people's ability to visualize that. Now, I'll tell you that there are a lot of very smart people who are visualizing it and presenting a system where it could be possible with government commitment and funding and the like. And funnily enough, if you're in a lot of jurisdictions in Australia and New Zealand, your government will actually have a date where they believe that can be achieved. So, for example, New South Wales has committed to 2056. Victoria has committed to 2050 as the date for zero death and serious injury on the road network. And in a sort of systemic transformation of the roads and roadsides, the vehicles, some more work on the people, and the way it all operates. So, those are the sort of figures. What we call the zero date. The zero date is very much a thing that's popping up around the world. I think San Francisco has got the closest zero date that they've committed to. It's something like 2036 or 2030 or something incredible. I mean, they're just basically saying we're going to get the tech to do everything as they would, and they've got a small area to work with, so maybe they've got a possibility. But anyway, there is this zero aspiration. I'm not going to fixate on that and show. I mean, that's a whole other sort of strategic modeling exercise as to show you how that may be possible and when, and how you can forecast and backcast, how you can come up with those sorts of strategies, essentially, if you genuinely want to achieve that. I'm not going to get fixated on that. But what I'm going to say is that, under a safe system, we are aiming at that zero, right? And as we make individual choices, if those individual choices trade off human life, we are countering our objective, our principle there of no death or serious injury. And sometimes it's very actually in your face obvious that, or you can present that and say, yeah, you can do that, but it's going to kill some of your community or seriously injure some of your community. Sometimes it's a bit more veiled and hidden. Anyway, I'll get into that a bit more. I'm going to give this analogy, and then I'm going to ask you a question, get you to do a little quiz and things. But I'm going to jump out of transport. I'm just going to give you an analogy here. The analogy is widget production. And this is linked to safety culture. And there was a time when factories producing widgets were very open systems. They had, workers working in there. They'd sometimes, had lots of beers at lunchtime, or, they had kids working on the machines, and there was death and serious injury abundant. People's arms ripped off, people getting crushed in machines, right? That was part of, like, in order to produce widgets, some people are going to get killed and seriously injured. It's just that's how it has to happen. Everybody was told it was very dangerous. All the kids were told, hey, it's dangerous. This machine's dangerous. Don't do this, don't do that. Here's how you do it. Pat it on the back. Look after yourself. Safety is your responsibility. That's what we call a pathological safety culture, a dangerous system where you require individuals to be the sole stopper of death and serious injury. Reactive system is where now, at a holistic system level in your factory, you're starting to identify problems that are killing and ripping arms off and the like, and then rectifying those and trying to fix those as they pop up. Then you elevate to what we call a calculating safety culture. And that is essentially where the economists get involved. And they come into the factory and they say, oh, we've had a look at your factory and we see that you've had 200 days of lost widget productivity, and you're paying out this money to families of breadwinners that have been crushed in the machines. And we've worked out that if you invest £30,000, it's pounds back in these days, £30,000, it's going to return you £90,000 in benefit in increased widget production. And we've come up with this thing called a benefit cost ratio, and you've got a benefit cost ratio of 3. And the factory owner goes, well, that's a good investment. Okay, let's do those changes. So that's what we call a calculating safety culture. When we get to a proactive safety culture, it actually says we have to have a factory producing widgets that is free of death and serious injury. And if there is risk of serious death or, the risk is so small, right? And we've got controls in place and we've got measures in place, and we will produce widgets up to whatever we can. And if you can't afford those safety interventions and the like, you've got to stop producing widgets until you can get that right. And then you've got to invest heavily in maintaining that safety culture. It is an ongoing investment across the board. Now, of course, you've put this analogy in your head to the road transport system now, and I've even given you some clues by talking about mobility instead of widget production here. It's actually not my slide. It's a very world-renowned safety culture slide around road transport. But basically, where the way we see the road transport system is somehow different, and I dare say we are in a position at the moment where we have certainly pathological approaches to safety in our road transport system. We know it's dangerous, and we give people licenses and we say, safety is your responsibility. You got to protect yourself out there. You know? And we give it to 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, and pat them on the back and just say, good luck, be safe. We've got certainly reactive, and we've been reactive for a very long time, identifying black spots and rectifying those. Calculating is like so intertwined into our decision making around infrastructure and benefit cost ratios and the like. We get little bits of proactive. We got bits of proactive now. A safe system is very much in this proactive space, creating a holistic system, more like a factory where we just don't accept these things that people are going to be killed and seriously injured by when they make their human mistakes. Proactive things that are currently out there. I mean, we do see some new roads with full barrier containment. They don't build the road and then wait and see where people run off the road and then put a bit of barrier there. I mean, the analogy on that is like building a high-rise building and then with balconies and then putting railings only where people have fallen off. Maybe if you go, oh no, we've done a risk calculation, we're going to put around the curves of the balconies because that's slightly higher risk. Well, that's for the case. You put the railings there all the time, and we're starting to see with new roads now. It's getting the full containment barrier system from the start. And those sort of things are pretty impressive. The other one I like to use as a little analogy, just to really reinforce this sort of difference between calculating and proactive, is school speed zones. Okay, school speed zones, if you do an economic calculation, they're horrible under our absolute stock standard benefit cost ratio way of looking at things. And we've done this, right? They are just a horrible investment because we slow every vehicle down. And what you do is you take that little bit, that 1 second or 2 seconds of increased travel time per vehicle, per school speed zone, and you spread that out across all your school speed zones every day of the year and all that traffic volume. And then what you take is this big pool of time and you multiply that, right, by the hourly rate for the standard Australian or New Zealander. It's like $88 an hour or something like that. Is the productivity rate, and you get this impact on the economy of lowering those school speed zones, right? What you then do is say, how many kids are we stopping being killed or seriously injured, and how do we put a dollar value to that? And we do that with a dollar value for human life, which is the Bureau of Statistics releases pretty much every year a new dollar value for human life. And you go, okay, well, how many have been killed and how many less are being killed because of these school speed zones? And basically, you go, there is nowhere near enough kids being killed in order to justify these school speed zones. And in fact, there's a really great economic argument for ripping them out. Get rid of all those school speed zones. Yeah, we're going to kill some kids and we're going to seriously injure some kids. But the value we'll get from that extra second or two that everybody in their car gets, and the value to the economy, it far outweighs the value of those kids' lives. And so you can see the ridiculousness of it if you put it in that context. But we make that decision all the time for the rest of the network, and we're not so it's not so in your face about how ethically reprehensible some of these decisions are. Anyway, that's just a little analogy. And my aim is to sort of put things in very vivid black and white or, examples like this, and it is a very complex thing operating a road system. But I'll keep moving on. Right, let's do a little quiz, and this is going to come up on your screen. Right now, one of the questions here, I haven't put it up yet. One of the questions we have covered. One of them we have not, and it's just you having a guess. Now, you are not being marked on this. This is not going to your grade. So feel free to do it. In fact, we don't even know who's, putting up what. So hopefully that'll pop up on your screen now. Now, again, occasionally there's a firewall somewhere in somebody's system that says, no, we're not going to let this poll pop up. But hopefully you can see that. And for anybody that hasn't popped up, I'll just read them out for your interest anyway. Which of the following is not a key principle of a safe system? Aim for no death or serious injury, aim for no mistakes on the road, people are vulnerable, people make mistakes, shared responsibility. And the next one, which is the one that we haven't covered at all, is at what speed did Usain Bolt cross the finish line in his world record 100-meter sprint? What speed across the finish line? And I'll come back to that shortly. But have a guess. Also have a stretch. I'll give you a minute there. Have a stretch. Fill up your water. I'll give you an extra minute after this. So we'll just have a little pause now and fill that out, and then we'll display the results. All right. Well, it looks like most people managed to find that poll. So let's end that and display the results. Don't worry if you didn't manage to get to it. Right, let's have a look here. Which of the following is not a key principle of a safe system? Aim for no death or serious injury. Aim for no mistakes on the road. So most of you are in the right sort of frame of mind there. We're not actually aiming for no mistakes on the road because we realize the impossibility of that. We're aiming to minimize and manage mistakes. And Usain Bolt, so 44 kilometers per hour is correct. So quite a lot of you got that. So why on earth am I asking about Usain Bolt? And some of you I know have had this analogy from me before, but if Usain Bolt is running along at 44 kilometers per hour and we parked a 2005 Toyota Camry at the end of his lane, and he ran along and bashed into that at 44 kilometers an hour, is he going to survive? Well, he's pretty strong. He's kind of the Hulk of a human. He probably is going to survive that. If we planted a big gum tree at the end of his lane, he slammed into that, he's going to hurt himself. But odds on he'll just survive but lead a normal, healthy life. And in fact, that is kind of how humans evolved. We've got a structure that basically allows us to run at our full speed into a tree or the like. And we'll hurt ourselves, but we should lead a normal, healthy life and recover. Now, it's an interesting correlation because the speed, your maximum running speed, is fairly equivalent to your tolerance for physical force running into a solid object. So that'll be assignment 1. We're going to make you run as fast as you can in a tree and just prove that you survive and lead a normal, healthy life. Of course not, but that's just a nice image to have in your mind of your tolerance to physical force. So we've got a comment in there that the car will be a write-off after Usain Bolt hits it. So what we actually have here is a graph of some European research that shows collision speed down here. Collision speed, right? Not speed limit. Put speed limits out of your mind for now. This is the speed of impact when a passenger vehicle hits a pedestrian, okay? And it's for all of society. And they've analyzed, this was lots of crashes, and they analyzed and what was the speed of impact and did they die or not? And the fatality probability is here. And so we see around 10 or 20 kilometers per hour, it's highly likely that the human will survive. Up around 60 or 70 kilometers per hour, it's highly likely that they're going to die. That's enough force to kill. And we see here at 30 kilometers per hour, there is an exponential increase. So, in layman's terms, it goes really bad really quickly after 30 kilometers per hour in speed. The great man there, he comes higher up there because he's got a better structure than most of a stronger structure than most of the community, because this is the whole community. But we do see this sort of stuff, which is what we expect humans to be able to handle. Hopefully that streams through for you there. Pop that into your memory stick just there. So that's what humans can handle. He broke a few ribs, but then came back the next year and won the gold medal in the Olympics. So there it shows you that you can do that sort of stuff as a human and survive and recover, and off you go at your running speed. We have this information for other crash types, right? So this is a right angle crash, like a T-bone crash, right? And what we're talking about here is the collision speed of this vehicle, which we call the bullet vehicle, right? The bullet vehicle is the one that does the damage in a crash. So sometimes you assign a bullet vehicle, sometimes you assign, well, both vehicles are a bullet vehicle. And this is the target vehicle, right? So this is bullet vehicle speed down the bottom here, collision speed. And again, fatality probability. But what you see here is the 30 to 40 kilometer per hour bullet vehicle speed, very survivable. The 80, 100 kilometer per hour is pretty much going to be a death to the target vehicle driver on the driver's side here, or passenger. And at about 50 kilometers per hour is our exponential increase there. Goes really bad really quickly after that. We have it for head-on crashes as well, where we have they're both bullet vehicles, both target vehicles in this case. And we see there around the 60, 50 kilometer per hour head-on crash is very survivable. And that's the speed each vehicle is traveling. Right? So if we take 70 kilometers per hour, which is where the exponential kick up happens, right, where it goes really bad really quickly above 70 kilometers an hour, that's a closing speed of 140 kilometers per hour, right? The energy of the crash, interestingly, all right, and we're very interested in energy, assuming you have same mass, same speed of vehicle, closing speed of 140, but the energy of the crash is a 70 kilometer per hour crash for each occupant of the vehicle. Now, there's this wonderful Mythbusters episode that proves this, because a lot of people go, well, no, hang on, it's double because you're going to get that force plus your force. No, it'll be double if you were in a tiny little smart car and you were crashing into a B double and you came in and your closing speed was 140 and then you got pushed back in your little smart car at the same speed, right? It's about the deceleration movement. Anyway, there's a really good Mythbusters episode. They do like Mythbusters do, and they just crash cars into each other and then into brick walls and measure forces and the like. So I'll even dig that out. I'm going to write a little note. I'll put that in. I'll put that into the Moodle because there's nothing like watching Mythbusters on work time and saying that it's part of my course. All right. So what we have is we're gathering more information as an industry about these crashes and the expected outcomes in terms of the speeds, the vehicle types, the angles of crashes. There's lots of contemporary work happening. The Centre for Automotive Safety Research in Adelaide University of Adelaide doing a lot more on this, coming up with better, more refined figures. For now, what we're going to use is sort of this severity chart. And what we see here are some numbers: 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. This is module sort of 3 and 4, where we start putting numbers to some of this, but I give them there. But basically what this is showing is pedestrian versus heavy vehicle. Well, if it's sort of happening in the range of 30, even a little bit lower, we're in a pretty bad situation for pedestrian. If we've got side impact, heavy vehicle versus car, well, we've got more mass, so, things get pretty bad. Head on, we know there that can happen at a higher speed. So 4 is really, really going to be bad. 0 is very good. And that's sort of this graded chart. There's quite a bit of judgment required still in this, but it's a little bit of help for you there between speed, crash type, road user. Now the tradition, okay, some of you, there's another Wally, by the way. No, I wasn't going to tell you that. Here is this traditional road safety Venn diagram that is kind of the bane of my existence. It has been for a long time. And it's not because it's wrong, it's because of how people use it. So what this is the representation of crash causation studies. And that's like it's often like the world's biggest crash causation study. They do another one every 5 years or so. And it's like, let's take 4,000 road crashes and do root cause analysis and really drill down into why are these happening, what's happened. And what they inevitably come up with is human error. Now, it could be driver, it could be pedestrian, it could be motorcyclist, cyclist. Humans made mistake, which has then resulted in the death or serious injury. Sometimes the road has played a role in activating the causation. Could be visual deceit, could be, pothole or whatever. Actually, potholes are almost never, well, I shouldn't say almost never. It's far rarer than the general public thinks in terms of actually causing death or serious injury, because it's such a visual thing that you see and your ride quality goes down and you get a scare. But in actual fact, it's not nowhere near as big an issue as people think. But anyway, vehicle malfunction plays a small role. This is great research. Don't get me wrong. Very valid, very statistically accurate. No worries about that. It's the way that then it's presented, and people say, well, we should address the biggest cause of crashes, being the human. Of course, that's why you do these studies. You find out what the biggest problem is, you address that problem. And this sort of reinforces a counter to safe system approach to addressing road safety. Because what it does is it tries to then, make the humans better drivers, better pedestrians. Now, I shouldn't say that counters it. I mean, that's a supporting part of the safe system. But what we need to do is look at transforming the system. And first of all, it's the hardest thing to change is human. I mean, it's our DNA, it's our biology. I mean, we could genetically engineer people to make them less risk-taking or more focused on the driving task and the like. But you're starting to really, there's some pretty questionable things for to society there. Or we could try to transform the system around them and try to minimize that as we can. This is what we talk about as a system change. Now, I've taken this as an Ostrodes. This one's an Ostrodes. That one's out of Kimbler's study. This is a system failure that's resulted in death or serious injury. The system has not intervened. They have these little driver excess and driver inexperience. I would just say Ostrodes can just put those into the system. They shouldn't sit outside. But the reason for that was its representation of the many, many human error elements that there are. So I won't go into this. This is sort of human factors stuff, but we've got slips, lapses, mistakes, unintentional violations. Before we get into deliberate violations, right? And a really good Ostrodes report is called "Error Within the System." I think it's the official research title of it. But basically, it shows that of the death and serious injury that's happening to our community, there's about somewhere around 70% of it sits under their specific definitions, above this line. So that's generally people trying to generally go about their business and just making human errors, falling asleep, okay, being distracted by the kid in the back, the phone, phone use sat up in that region, which people get angry at. Oh, I can't. But I mean, the reality is that some astounding figure of the population are using their phones when they're driving. So you kind of need to say, well, can we change something around the system to alter that? Maybe their phone can't be used in the car, it doesn't work, or I won't go into that either. There is a significant problem here. There's no denying that we have the highly inappropriate, 180 kilometre per hour down the wrong way of the freeway, death and serious injury. We have the, really heavily drugged up person driving through the residential streets at speed, those sorts of things. And they're somewhere in the order of 30% of the death and it's about 35% of the death, I think it is, and it's about 29% of the serious injuries in Australia. Now, the thing is that the media really just latches onto these, right? And kind of does this disservice to road safety in the sense that it hides the fact that the majority of these, I think these need to be treated in a very different way, and there's some huge sort of social, societal problems and challenges here. We're doing some recent work with Ostrodes and under these recidivist repeat offenders and in high speed, high impact, and you really sort of discover that people drive how they live in a sense, and it's a bigger issue than just the road aspect. Of the roads tend to sometimes present the problems in that way, as well as many other society issues as well. And we need to but all of these ones, I think, have a much sort of clearer, cleaner way for us to address it, and it's utilising the roads and the roadsides, the management of speed, the vehicles and the vehicle interventions, and continuing to work on trying to help people do the best job that they can in their driving tasks, riding tasks, walking tasks. This is where I'm going to focus most of my attention. There's a lot of our interventions and things within a safe system that will address this, but it requires a bit more thinking. All right, I'm going to get you to do a little exercise. It's very easy, and again, you're not being marked on it, and I'll give you sort of 3 or 4 minutes on this one, and then I'm going to move on. But what it is it's talking about here the traditional approach to road safety. And then we've got these different boxes. And then over here, we've got this safe system approach. And what we want you to do is link up there. So you might say, okay, we had this sort of victim blaming approach where we look for that blame with the individual who's done something wrong. And now instead of that, we're trying to maybe maximize safe mobility, or maybe you say 4 pillars optimization. Okay, so I'm going to put it up as a poll so you can just sort of answer them as you go. And as I said before, don't get too concerned. We can't tell what you actually answer. And some of them could go to multiple spots. So there's probably an argument to be made on some of them that they could go to a different spot. But hopefully that's appeared on your screen. If it hasn't, and you are welcome to just write into the chat like 1A, 2D, 3C, or whatever you want based on what you can see on the screen. But have a go at it. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes on that, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about a few other. All right. So I think most people are doing pretty well there. Submit your final things and we'll just briefly show these out. There might be a little bit of an issue for some people being able to use the poll. Oh, actually, I think there might be quite an issue for everybody using the poll because I think there's only 2 questions that have come in there. So sorry about that, but you've had a little think about at least 2 of them. Yeah, so it appears only 2 of those questions transferred over. Well, let me get rid of that then. That's helped. I'll get rid of that. So some of you did a bit of thinking on that, but let's have a look at this just to reinforce that. I apologize for that. Victim blaming. Well, we're recognizing now there's human error and it's part of being a human. We're trying to minimize its consequence. There used to be quite an emphasis on road user education and compliance. We're going to continue to work on that sort of stuff. It's not going to be ignored, but there's now more effort to try to work out how we make that system more forgiving. And then there used to be this focus on, crash reduction of all crash types, like crash severity and the like, minor crashes and the like. We're really honing in now on severe injury minimization. Four pillars used to be very independent. They were there, but now they're sort of optimized jointly as an interaction. And then there's this mobility safety balance that's now maximizing safe mobility. And it's like change in wording and change in mindset. I think Ian Cameron, who's a Western Australian, actually summed it up quite nicely in his speech, I think, in the UN at one point. We need a paradigm shift in road safety policy to stop the road death epidemic, and we need it now. It is unrealistic to expect that education and enforcement alone will bring the needed step change. Even road users who know and follow the rules make mistakes. A safe system creates an environment in which a simple mistake will no longer kill people. Probably should say kill or seriously injure people, but that's a good summary. All right, let's talk a little bit now closer to home in terms of the road and roadside features, and then I'll expand out a little bit again. But here is a section of road. It's the Melbourne Highway, so no prizes for guessing what it is because it's written on the screen. But the central wire rope safety barrier system here is quite new when this photo was taken. And this was previously an undivided road, so it was separated by a single white line, or sometimes a barrier line, two white lines next to each other. And it had one lane in each direction with an occasional overtaking. It was 100 kilometres an hour, and it had high risk across the route of head-on and run-off road crashes. It had a history of that as well. And the project proposal was to put in this central wire rope safety barrier system in a narrow flushed median, as you can see there. So without knowing anything about the background of this project or the area really or the like, I can show you one other photo of it. There you go. There's a bit more of it. You can see there it's a 2+1 arrangement, which is basically what we would talk about as two lanes in one direction, one lane in the other, and then at some point you just swap that around. So there's two lanes in the other direction, and you have swap the overtaking opportunity. So without knowing anything more about this road or this project, just type into the chat some of the things that you think the project team had, big hurdles the project team had to get over in order to implement this. And this was a while back, maybe 7 years ago or something, and they spent a huge amount of time trying to get through some of these issues. This was the first flush narrow median in Victoria central barrier system of its kind. So just type into the chat any ideas. And I'm actually going to give out a couple of prizes for ones that I'll just jot a couple down. They're not necessarily the biggest ones, but they were some of the ones that I think are worth us having a little chat about. So just pop anything down there you think could cause trouble. Okay. Oh, lots of good stuff coming in here. It's kind of feel this group may have had similar projects with all the good stuff that's coming in. I'm just going to read out a few of them and give out a few prizes. Not to say others aren't very good, but right. Okay, so we're seeing some people talking about some pretty technical and barrier stuff. So the crest curve and the ability for the barrier to a barrier intention to be put on that. The gradient, the visibility at night. Okay, so Wayne can have a prize for motorbikes. I want to talk about that in third session, but it was one that was a significant thing to work through. Loss of a lane was a good one, as in the ability to overtake across into the other oncoming lane when you put a central barrier down. So that was a good one. Lateral deflection. So Mitch can have a prize, and I'm going to talk about that one. So the lateral deflection of the barrier system was an amazing one. Access to properties was a big one as well there. Very good. Cost, space, delineation, cost, BCR, cost, overtaking, excavation, ability to U-turn, emergency response, ability to U-turn, also the ability to, get to the roadside on the other side if it's on fire, animals crossing. As I say, I reckon many of you are either working on or have worked on or heard about projects like this, because all those things that you brought up were big challenges, big issues for the region trying to get this project in. The one that I'm going to point out now, and I'll talk about some of the other ones that you've mentioned later on in other sessions where we delve into different road length treatments and the like, which Mitch brought up, was lateral deflection of the barrier system. So if a vehicle was to leave the road here, hit the barrier at a 25-degree angle at 100 kilometers per hour, as per its test protocol, and the vehicle had the weight it should, the barrier will deflect into the oncoming lane a bit. Okay, so technically this does not meet the standard. So this caused an amazing amount of challenges, because the argument by a lot of people was this does not meet standard, thus we can't do it, right? So we are going to leave the white line because that meets standard. And you sort of go, well, hang on a second, like, can we have a logical look at this? I mean, surely a barrier system that stops vehicles at, shallower angles or lighter vehicles, or it's only an instantaneous point in time that they're actually going to be in the other lane. So it'd have to be right at the right time. Plus, we'd have to have this vehicle running edge line, and we know people don't often do that. I mean, the ability to stand back and look logically at this, but the reason I bring it up is that we have a fixation on meeting standards, and we need to be able to look at them from a logical perspective. And a safe system assessment is incredibly useful in these scenarios. Okay, because a safe system assessment is not at all associated with have you met standards. It's associated with what is the chance of death and serious injury occurring on your existing road and on your future designs. And you can very clearly show the massive benefit you get from this, even though it doesn't quite meet the technical standard on that. And so that's a really useful part of a safe system assessment. So I was on the team that did two of the road safety audits associated with this this project, in the many sort of independent bits of advice around this challenge, and yeah, it really captured. The people were really willing to let it, saying no, we just leave it as a painted white line, because that's the standard. Anyway, of course, after it was installed, it got hit, and I mean, one of the things that didn't really come up a huge amount in the comments that you made with there was the impact on maintenance, be that had the ability to maintain the existing pavement, the roadside, or the barrier system itself going to get hit and need to be replaced. And we genuinely are having a lot of regions and project teams who are facing massive opposition from maintenance crews and maintenance departments with the installation of this type of thing, to say no, it's going to get hit, and the cost and the ability for us to maintain the road is not there, and you can't do it. Now, my answer to that is we need to review our maintenance procedures and practices and processes and alter them, because there is a massive risk that's sitting there for our community, and we have far better ability to manage risk with our maintenance crews and the like, and work out operational processes. That's not a stopper of this happening. We just need to alter that to work with it. But that's again another aside. Of course, this got hit. It got hit, and then the region got a phone call, and you know, if you've ever worked in a region, as I have, but you get your phone call from the public, you're usually bracing yourself for the ear bashing you're about to get about something. But in this case, they just wanted to thank whoever it was that installed that for saving their life. And they did a really good job of then capturing the regional engineer who was involved in that, was smart enough to go and get the comms people and then get that. And there's a lovely little 2-minute video, which some of you have probably seen. It's in your memory stick. It's on Moodle. I want you to watch it. It's a little 2-minute, 3-minute description of this. And to me, it is just safe system in action, because somebody fell asleep. They left their lane, right? They've made a mistake. The system, in this case, the barrier, has just catered for that mistake, redirected them. They've been involved in a crash, which is hitting the barrier, but it's such minor severity. Now, if the barrier wasn't there, they would have fallen asleep, drifted, head-on crash, and we would have been, well, our industry would have been pointing our finger and saying they were not in control of the vehicle, they shouldn't have driven in that state, and it's their fault. And you'd find the courts would agree with that. They fell asleep. Its blame is attributed to driver X who fell asleep. So it's just to me a great example, and it's just one of, you know, infinite ways that we can alter the system to cater for mistakes. Now, we don't want that to happen. We're going to encourage people to have a good night's sleep and not drive in that situation, and rest, and, you know, provide lots of other features to try to wake them up before they hit the barrier and everything like that. But it's a kind of neat little package. And on that line, there's lots of ways that we can intervene in the system. It's not just the barrier. Like, some people will say, oh yeah, no, safe system, you're all just wire rope safety barriers and roundabouts. No, I mean, it's a holistic system, and they just happen to be, in some scenarios, features that have good alignment with safe system principles. And I do stress in some scenarios. It's not about the particular treatment itself. It's about the way it addresses the principles we've been talking about. But we can do it with infrastructure solutions. We can do it with vehicles, speeds, road users. And the Swiss cheese model is, it was actually invented, the people who came up with it were for, you know, US Postal Service. Why do packages arrive damaged? And they looked, and then they created slices of Swiss cheese in their model with gaps in them. And in order for the parcel to come out damaged, it needed to not have an intervention in any of these different spots. I mean, so then it's been adapted to the road environment, the safe system thinking. But essentially, we're trying to close off holes in the Swiss cheese, and we're trying to make them smaller, and then thus having redundancy in our system. It can be a good thing. Okay, we've got about half an hour left in today's session, I think. I do have a bit more to cover. Thank you for your input on that other one. It's excellent stuff. Okay. So safer road users. I'm going to talk about safe road users, or what we can do with the humans, because I have been sort of fairly pessimistic about the ability for us to alter human behaviour in the lead up here. And some people have taken an impression that the human is completely ignored under a safe system and not trying to improve human behaviour. It's part of the system. What we're really stressing is acknowledgement of the limitations and the fact that we will not get perfect humans using our system. And in fact, I like those those sort of quotes that are, a system that only works if nobody makes mistakes is not a system designed for humans. Like those sorts of quotes are quite elegant ways of presenting that information. But what we do know with road users is that we can get improvements using education, encouragement, enforcement, graduated licensing or entry to the system. And these are all things that help us see better road performance. Be that with mainly drivers, but riders or pedestrians as well. I'll talk about these sort of briefly individually now. Education is effective in road safety, and it gives us a nice sort of cultural platform to work off with things. But we do know that, obviously, the little humans are the best in terms of taking on our education, and they can be nice conduits to feed into their parents as well. So if you can convince them or educate them that wearing a seatbelt is very important in a car, they will also then question their parents on seatbelt use and the like. So you can get some interesting little improvements there. Young drivers are at most risk, and we know there's a few things that work and a few things that don't work. The first thing I'd say is do not send a young driver on an advanced driver training course. They come out far more likely to be killed or seriously injured than before they went in. That's anything that involves high speed, getting out of skids and the like. That's probably one of the most comprehensively researched things in road safety around the world. And it's slightly counterintuitive, because if we know if there's a risk, we want to train people. And that's a good sort of process to do. The issue, and the reason why this is so bad, it's probably counterintuitive, is that the people go into it and they come out of it with a new set of skills, but also a perception of an ability to handle risk. So their risk-taking elevates significantly. And the small benefit that they get in improved handling under these scenarios, which are so frequent and rare, is just absolutely swamped by their increased risk-taking behaviour or their elevated risk. And it's really sad to see investments in these types of advanced driver training courses, because we're actually actively increasing risk to our young drivers. So on this one, there are some sort of driver training scenarios that do appear to have some more benefit, but they're pretty much done on the open road or in classrooms about management of risks and scenario thinking. So that's one. Ensuring young drivers have the highest safety features in cars. We do see young drivers often in very poor safety features in cars because that's all they can afford. Often you see the parents in cars that'll basically drive themselves and have airbags in places they didn't even know airbags could come out of. And so you go, there's a complete risk discrepancy here. So there's that one. And then just the hours on the public road network is where the majority of the benefit in safety comes from there. So a few people supporting that, which, it's very challenging. Telling individuals to drive safely because they will be involved in a crash really doesn't work very well. Okay, so this is a far better example in my mind. So if we tell people, hey, don't use your mobile phone because it increases your risk and you're more likely to be involved in a crash, they just go, they probably just go, nah, I've been doing it for, this is what they say. They go, I've been doing it for 10 years, I've never had a crash. Or, no, I only do it when it's safe. And I'm. And the reality is that to a degree, they're not wrong. Right? The risk of driving using a mobile phone is minuscule. Okay. Now, obviously, I don't want you saying this to the public. Right? But the thing is that we are looking at the data of crashes and death and serious injury involving mobile phones at a society collective level. And that is the addition of all those minuscule risks. And that comes to a significant risk to society. But what we're doing is we're saying, this is a big risk. And then we're trying to convince an individual that it's a big risk to them. Well, it's not. Right? And they are smart enough, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, to know that. And so what we have to do is look for far creative or different ways to approach trying to alter that behavior. And this one is a great one by the TAC, because it's saying if you text and drive, your kids are going to text and drive. That is a motivator, right? And that is an immediate, like, they go, well, you know, I'm a good driver and I'm not going to crash if I use my phone. But the kid, I don't want him texting and driving. And they will actually alter their behavior accordingly. And this works for things like speed limit changes. You did just, if you're involved in speed limit changes, and I've been involved in speed limit changes for like 20 years, and it's fascinating. But do not go to your community and say, we are reducing the speed limit here for your safety. They're just going freaking berserk. Your kids' safety, yes. You're doing it for environmental reasons. You're doing it to protect wildlife. Just not them stuffing up and this, like, because it's talking to an individual about individual risk, but you're talking from a collective risk perspective. You're talking about, and we're talking different languages, and it just really grates on the individual. And that's why we hear all that, it's revenue raising, and it's, you know, all of this, because we're talking a language from a collective to an individual about their, anyway, I'm off on a slight tangent here. Okay, what works? Whole of school approach works throughout their whole education in different road safety, partnering with other activities such as enforcement, this whole coordinated effort. Support for community education. There are hugely motivated groups in the community who want to improve road safety, and it's our responsibility to ensure that they're doing evidence-based things we know that are going to work. Graduated licensing. So that's basically restrictions on people as they get into the driving task, and we know their risk profile alters significantly. I'll show you shortly. And targeting especially motivated groups, and parents being the absolute most motivated group. And action programs to change the way road users look at the road. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. What we know does not work, fear tactics in terms of actually changing people's driving or riding or walking behavior. So it's very, very hard to scare people into changing their behavior. And the reality is, the studies have shown that from the road safety perspective, if you go with shock and awe, fear, scare the hell out of the public ads and the like, you actually end up altering the safest people anyway. They're the ones that actually resonate, trigger, change behavior. The other end that you're trying to really target aren't affected by these. That being said, fear tactics are pretty good if you're going to make legislative change. Scare the hell out of them and then put a law in place to rectify that or to lessen that risk. You get public support for it, but an actual behavior change, not the best. Skill-based driver training, we just talked about. One-off events, again, you need to coordinate all of this, have a coordinated messaging. Driver simulators, now admittedly the studies on this are a little bit old. I'm not up to speed on the most latest and greatest driver simulators and their ability to help. So, but there's nothing yet that I've seen. Membership in car racing, go-karting clubs and those sort of things. Again, it's the same as skill-based driver training. Just providing the stats on how many people have been killed in an area or on the road or the like. Very not great on changing individual behavior. Again, it can be appropriate for, you know, if you're going to change the speed limit on a road, maybe some big billboards saying how many people have been killed and the like. That can help. And here's the one I was talking about. So learner drivers, those are with a supervising driver next to them. They're actually very low risk. As soon as they go out on their own, the risk just skyrockets, and then it comes down over time. Now, these are actual crash numbers, so you need to do this by crashes per vehicle kilometre travelled to give you an accurate representation, which is not quite. But even when you do that, what you find is that even the most, even the most experienced drivers out of vehicle kilometres per travel, so like a like-for-like comparison here, are not as safe as learner drivers. So there's your argument. If somebody says it's all about, no, it's the way we will solve all this road safety is if everybody becomes a really great driver. Should be have advanced driver training, and then you have the car racing drivers talking about people needing to learn how to do cadence braking in order to. That's not our road safety issue. I think this graph demonstrates that very, very well. Encouragement's an interesting aspect of road safety, which I think is we can leverage more. People appear to actually do better if we pay them to do better. And you can do that in convoluted ways, but certainly a couple of jurisdictions have trialed, if you get no demerit points in your probationary driving period, you get a free full license, which is usually like whatever it is, $400 or $700 or something. And that actually motivates people to alter behavior, amazingly. Advertising and marketing can have benefit as long as you can try to get it to a specific behavior. And that's far better in terms of, take a break every 2 hours of driving rather than, don't drive while you're fatigued. I mean, the don't drive while you're fatigued is like, give them a specific strategy. How do you do that? Interesting sort of recall versus action change. And this is sort of how do you evaluate an advertising campaign? Very different, extremely different. What they use is recall as a main method of doing it. And comedy seems to be pretty effective for one of our biggest target audiences, which is young males. And you can get some interesting changes. So what I've done actually in your memory stick is I put, I think, 4 or 5 for sort of comedy road safety ads, which actually are pretty effective. The New Zealanders do these better than anybody else I've seen in the world. They've just got that right way of doing it. So have a look at those in your own time if you're interested. And we're trying to then alter, get a cultural change on some of this. And yeah, Neil's sort of put in there that more stick than carrot seems to motivate. Yes and no. It's a complex one, and it changes depending on the demographic you're targeting, the issue you're targeting, and the system you've set up around them. But it's a good thing to start to think about. So changing a culture I've put there is also about changing community's perception of road safety. Community's perception of road safety is heavily driven by media, and media is incentivized to sensationalize the story. And so we often see the ice addict crashing into something that is what the media wants to portray, because it's got all those media sexy elements, and it's what they want to, they know they're going to get attraction from. The underlying just embedded death and serious injury in our community that is not big newsworthy, when the mother fell asleep at the wheel and drifted off the road into trees, or the person who was distracted by something and ran through a red light, it'll get the news, but it's that quick little, two people were killed in an intersection in Bayswater, and police are investigating the cause of the crash. Right? So it doesn't really sort of get anyway. So what we're trying to do is sort of alter public's perception. We're going to talk about, and you want to see this one again, this is actually a New Zealand ad, stolen by New South Wales, then stolen by South Australia after that. This is the South Australian version. I shouldn't say stolen, I think they got permission, and New Zealand is a lovely sharing people, so they said, yeah, everybody can use it. So this is about trying to see that other people will make mistakes. So that's why your behaviour needs to alter. Not you. I mean, you're a good driver. Now, other people, we gotta take that. So trying to shift a little bit of that. Talking to the public about human tolerance to physical force, biomechanics of injury. That's a pretty hard conversation to have with the public. TAC's had an innovative crack at it. I mean, I use the Usain Bolt analogy, right, to try to sort of frame a bit of that. TAC got produced Graham. Graham's a life-size sculpture who looks just scarily like a human thing, and sits in the museum there, and basically has been developed by a trauma surgeon, accident reconstruction expert, and the artist, as to what you would need to look like to survive on the roads. And so you can actually go and see Graham and then interact with that, hold an iPad, look into the structure. But it's a sort of long-term aim here, is to create a generation of kids who question why you can't safely use our roads and why the energy is so big. And so actually one of the work we did with the TAC was to create a year 11 physics module, which is all around this. So then they re-engineer a road environment, which is their assignment, to get Graham back to a normal human. So, they might get the rural road environment and they can use barriers, they can alter speeds, they can put roundabouts at intersections, and they're seeing how that actually impacts on the physics, the energy. And then they can do the urban environment, they can do raised pedestrian crossings, or they can do speed limit changes or separated bike lanes and these sorts of things. So, it's a really innovative trying to get the cultural change. So enforcement works, and enforcement underpins road safety, but does not drive road safety. And the police are very good at saying this. We're not, we're just here to enforce a system. Strategic enforcement's good because we've got limited resources. You've got to target it at the best spots. Specific deterrence and general deterrence. So specific deterrence is I was fined for doing that, I won't do it again, as opposed to general deterrence, I could be fined for doing different things, so I'll be good. And visual presence really helps with that general deterrence. And speed cameras work, and point-to-point cameras work. And anybody from New South Wales, I encourage you to get in line with the rest of the world and start doing point-to-point for your passenger vehicles as well as your heavy vehicles. The only jurisdiction that only does heavy vehicle point-to-point. Point-to-point's great. Photo of a number plate at one point, 10 k's down the track or 20 k's down the track, another photo, average speed, and you get the benefit of the cameras basically for the whole length rather than that individual spot that everybody knows where it is, and they slow down for that and then they speed back. And we can do this sort of thinking we're at an in-car level these days. The technology's there. Alcohol interlocks are just a elegant way to manage risk in a society. Because if you have a recidivist drink driver, that person who cannot stop themselves drinking and driving, and you just start throwing the book at them and say, oh, we're giving them an hour $5,000 fine, take their license off them, crush their car. Right? What you're actually doing is, yes, you're kind of addressing that risk. Well, actually, you're often not addressing that risk because they get in other vehicles and they do it. But you also start to spiral people's life further out of control in a lot of situations. They can't get to work, they can't get to their kids, they can't, there's a whole lot of spin down. So if you can target the particular behavior with an alcohol interlock, for example, where they have to blow to that, be zero, and then they drive. You're still giving them the facility to operate as a functioning member of society, but addressing the particular risk. We can do that with speed, no worries. Speed interlocks, easily done. There just doesn't seem to be the appetite at this stage. In fact, that's my Vic Roads car, 16 years ago or something. Had a speed device, told me what speed zone I was in, and if I was to go over the speed limit, would beep at me. It could easily have controlled the car as well, centrally monitored. Technology, says 16 years ago, technology not the issue. Political will, privacy lawyers, other things like that are our issue. The vehicles are going to help, and I'm going to move quickly here because we're nearly near the end. The vehicles are pretty exciting in terms of what's happening, but it's a long way off. To get a 5-star ANCAP safety rated frontal offset, that's a 64 km/h crash to get 5 stars. Okay, that's a long way from where the speeds we travel. Side impact into a pole. I'll give a prize quickly to get 5 stars. You need to side impact to the pole, not give the dummy a level 3 serious injury above. So basically acquired brain injury. Anybody want to guess what speed that is? That test happens at 5 stars. Get 5 stars. Got into the chat, have a guess. Right, Murphy, I think it was. I think that was the name that flashed past. Murphy, 30 km/h. That's close enough. It's 32 km/h. 32 km/h. It's actually just recently gone up from 29. Side impact into a pole. So side curtain airbags ain't doing a huge amount. I mean, they're helping out a bit, but that's not fast when you consider the speeds we travel next to trees, power poles. And if we're assuming people are going to make mistakes, pedestrian, about 40 km/h, pedestrian test. But when do we get to the vehicle like this, which has no steering wheel, because the vehicles are doing it all? Well, it's hard to tell. And people will tell you very different scenarios. It's a long way off. So, I mean, we're going to get, there's 5 levels of autonomy. A vehicle like this with no steering wheel that can go on every road is a level 5 vehicle. Level 4 vehicle still doesn't need to have a steering wheel, but it's only assigned to specific roads. We're sort of down in level 1 and 2 at the moment with some auto emergency braking and a few other things integrating into the system. And even your Teslas and things are up there in parts of level 2 and 3 really. But we've got a long way to go before we get there, and the whole fleet's changed over. And there's just an immense amount of death and serious injury if we just sit on our hands and think the vehicles are going to solve all of our issues. But what we're going to see is this increase in vehicle technology that comes in and helps. Oh, lost the leg there. But what happens when that one hit the dummy is it had slowed down. And so we've got benefits, which there might still be crashes, but there'll be lower impact, lower speed and the like. And speed is so critical to the safe system. I'm going to do this quickly, but essentially I just want you to know that speed is not a linear relationship with severity outcomes. There are a couple of reasons for that. If you're traveling at 60 km/h and there's a hazard at 45 meters and you see it, then you hit the brakes, so that's reacting and then hit the brakes, you'll just touch it. At 70 km/h, you will hit it at 46 km/h. So you're only 10 km/h more, but it's 46 km/h impact speed. And what we know here, from a fatal injury perspective, change in speed is a 4th power relationship versus the change in speed, and a 3rd power relationship for serious injury crashes. It's actually a 2nd power relationship for all other crashes. Somewhere down here. If you're not a maths person, you don't understand power relationships, don't worry. It's basically just saying changing speed by small amounts gives big impacts on the higher severity crashes. The community needs a lot of bringing along on this journey with speed and speed management, speed limits, speed management, the influence speed has on crashes. And I won't, that's in your notes. You can have a look at it. I've got lots of research around public perception of speed and speed limits and speed management and the impact that has on safety. And it's very interesting. But we know we can create a safe system, regardless of the road environment, people, and the roads, by filtering everything through a safe speed. But the safe system is about a transport network, and we need to move people and goods, right? So we're not saying that everything goes to 20 kilometers per hour across the whole network. I mean, that will give you a safe system, but it's not really a transport system in a lot of circumstances. There are some areas that absolutely could go down to those speeds, but there's a lot of areas we need to keep the speed up. So we do need to think about that. But we can do better management of speed through infrastructure and/or speed limits. So it's not just speed limits; they get a lot of attention, but we can manage speed beautifully using infrastructure. Explaining why speed limits in place improves acceptance and compliance, and protection of vulnerable road users is generally well accepted, especially those little ones. Variable speed limits targeting risk is a really good one as well. I'm not going to go into detail on that. I want to finish by saying risk is this traditional formula of likelihood times consequence. What's the chance bad thing will happen? And then when it happens, how actually bad is it going to be? And that's the international definition of risk. Financial risk, health risk, economic risk. It's also road safety risk. But in a safe system assessment, we have extracted exposure out of likelihood to exposure, likelihood, and consequence. And we'll pick this up next week. But we can alter exposure to crashes by stopping people actually getting to the conflict point, blocking off a level crossing, for example, or a road entry, separating completely one road user type from vehicle. Yeah, you've got exposure to cyclist to pedestrian crashes there, but not exposure to that vehicle. Likelihood is things we've been doing in road safety forever, right? All those things like line marking, delineation, sealed shoulders, lighting, traffic signals, audio tactile, RRPMs, you name it. It's all usually likelihood, lessening the chance people are going to crash. Signals are all about lessening the chance people will crash. And these are all things we're going to continue to work on and come up with things. But severity is now a crash is going to happen. How bad is it going to be? And the things you have in your toolkit there are the speed, the angle, the weight of the vehicle, protection, clothing, helmets, these sorts of things. And that's what we're kind of playing with. Slowing vehicles through an intersection. Redirecting energy along something rather than into a abrupt stop. All severity. I'm not going to do the quiz because it's right on time now, but I'm going to pick all that up next module. You've got a quiz in Moodle that you're going to have to get to. If you don't have access to Moodle, we want you to jump in there, get in contact with them and get access to Moodle. It's like a 10 or 9 question quiz. It's what we've covered. Jump in there, do that, and we'll see you in a couple of days for our next module. It's right on the hour now. So thank you very much. Hope you got something out of that. We're going to be more honed in on the infrastructure in our next session. Thank you.